10 spine-chilling sleepover horror stories, unexplained nightmares and cursed gatherings exposed. The warm July evening air buzzed with the laughter of 4 teens. Lila's backyard was transformed into a festive wonderland, string lights glimmering like stars against the darkening sky. As the sun slipped away, the cozy basement beckoned. This was supposed to be their escape, a night of games, snacks, and ghost stories. But little did they know, the night would take a turn that none of them had anticipated. When the door creaked open suddenly, and Lila's estranged uncle walked in, the atmosphere shifted. His eyes were hollow, shadows lurking beneath them like sinister secrets. The air thickened as his presence invaded their laughter. While the others exchanged wilting glances, Lila offered a hesitant invitation, dismissing an instinctual chill clawing at her throat. The outsiders settled into their circle, a grim smile creeping across his face as the tales began. As they huddled beneath blankets, illuminated only by the flickering light, the basement transformed into a crypt of fear. Jenna shivered as Sam shared a story about a girl in their town haunted by her vengeful spirit, a child who had never been buried correctly. An echoing thud resounded from above, sending a jolt through them. Max laughed uneasily, the tension slicing the air. "Just the house settling," he said, but doubt seeped in. The quietness enveloped them like a dark fog, while a chill crept down their spines. "Did you know the witch was rumored to have cursed our bloodline?" Lila's uncle intoned, his voice low and deliberate. An uneasy quiet followed, the whispers of their folklore twisting in the shadows. The basement walls seemed to close in, breaths growing shallow. The stories thickened into reality. A claustrophobic dread hung heavy. "Guys, this is just a story, right?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. But then came another thud, louder, more insistent. The doubt settled in their minds, a chilling reminder that folklore often hides dangerous truth. They peered at one another, searching for signs of fear, and they found it. What if something real lurked between their tales, ready to haunt them? Suddenly, the lights flickered and dying shadows seemed to dance on the walls. They held their breaths, hearts racing. Was this Lila's uncle playing a trick? The laughter turned nervous and broke like glass. The very air felt different, bending reality just out of reach. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." A loud crash erupted in the darkness overhead, sending them into a frenzy. They bolted from the basement, spilling into the familiar streets that now felt strangely alien. A sinister stillness blanketed the neighborhood, fences lined like sentinels hiding secrets. What was once their safe haven had transformed into a haunting labyrinth. "Do you feel that?" Lila whispered, but before anyone could respond, she backed away, her eyes wide as if she'd realized something. Shadows lengthened, curling around their legs like icy fingers. Truss frayed as panic erupted. Were they truly safe, or had they unleashed something dark upon themselves? As they held onto each other for courage, uncertainty gripped them tightly. In a chilling gust of wind, the whispers intensified as if the night itself breathed, leaving them questioning who, if anyone, could survive this creeping darkness. The night was silent, yet it felt alive with a pulse that quickened with each heartbeat. Lila's mind raced. Their world had shifted from laughter to terror in mere moments. She tightened her grip on her friends, their hands cold and clammy like the chill swirling around them. "Guys, maybe we should go back inside," Jenna suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. But the cloying darkness felt suffocating. The house loomed behind them, shadowy and foreboding. Something stirred at the edge of the light cast down by the string bulbs, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. "No, we can't," Max's voice faltered. His eyes darted toward the house, then back to the encroaching shadows. "Lila, what if it came from inside?" Lila swallowed hard, her throat dry. The basement door stood ajar, creaking with a sinister little push. What if it's just our imaginations? She countered, though the tremor in her own voice betrayed her. But the thudding above them, echoing like a heartbeat, insisted that there was something up there, something waiting. The telltale heaviness of dread sank in as they felt pushed further from the safety of the light. Silently, they all directed their gaze toward the open door, a dark mouth yawning wide in invitation or warning. I think I saw something move in the window, Jenna pointed, and just as she did, another crash resounded, this time from the depths of the house. Okay, this isn't funny anymore, Sam shouted, stepping back. What are we doing here? We should call for help. Max hesitated. What if we're not alone? Lila's uncle, he was acting weird. Do we trust him? The air thickened. It was palpable, the fear growing solid in their chests. Lila felt her heart race as she recalled her uncle's words, the curse that haunted their bloodline. A chill crept down her spine. What if they had summoned something? Suddenly, the ground beneath unsteady feet seemed to tremor. Jenna screamed, clutching her stomach, the sound piercing through the night. Help! She cried, head twisting toward the house, eyes wide with terror. We need to get out of here. Now! Before they could find their bearings, something jolted on the porch, a shifting form barely seen in the near-complete blackness. A silhouette stepped into the flickering light, and Lila gasped as recognition hit her. Yet, the outline was not as she remembered. The same hollow eyes as her uncle stared back at them, only these carried an ethereal glow filled with malice. Lila, it whispered, a haunting melody that sent chills down her spine. You've called me panicking. Lila stumbled back. No! You're not him! The echoing screech of their silent bond broke apart as they whipped around and dashed away, legs pumping with adrenaline. The night air was heavy, almost suffocating as they fled down the street, heartbeats pounding in furious rhythm. In that moment, they were no longer four friends, they were prey, fueled by a primal fear. Desperate glances between them suggested a horrific truth. One of them could already be marked. They turned a corner, gasping like a film reel played too fast, adrenaline blending confusion and horror like paint on canvas. But as they skidded to a halt, the path in front of them seemed to contort, drawn into darkness. Panic engulfed them as they realized they had sprinted right into a cul-de-sac trapped. Where do we go? Sam panted, scanning for an exit. But pulled from behind them, shadows loomed closer, darker than the night itself. In that dismal fog, whispers began to crawl around them, words indistinguishable yet suffocating. As the shadows advanced, clawing at the edges of their sanity, Lila could only think of escape. We can't stay here. But before she could finish, a rustle in the bushes to their side caught their attention. A figure emerged, cloaked in the remnants of moonlight. Lila, help me! It was a voice threaded with anguish, just as familiar, a girl from their town missing for years. A sickening recognition twisted in Lila's stomach. But how could that be? The night grew thick with tension. As fear held them captive, the deeper terror set in. What did the night want from them? And who or what would emerge from the shadows next? The shadows closed around them, thick and pulsing with an energy that felt alive. Panic surged stronger than before. Lila could barely breathe, heart racing like a wild animal trapped in a cage. Jenna stepped back, shaking her head, eyes wide. That can't be her, she's gone. But the figure moved closer, face pale and drawn, eyes glassy with a haunting sorrow. Lila, you have to believe me, it pleaded. I didn't choose this. I just want to go home. Home. That word felt like poison. Lila felt its cold touch, and dread seeped into her bones. Stay back! She cried, the urgency of her tone clawing at the air. Max's face twisted in fear. What if it really is her? What if she's trapped? No! Sam yelled, voice raw with desperation. What if this is a trap? We can't just take her word for it. A beat of agonizing silence stretched between them, with the shadows looming heavier, whispering secrets only they could hear. From the corner of her eye, Lila saw the others nodding in agreement, the fear tightening its grip on their unity. Please, the figure moaned, a sound that sent ripples of despair through Lila's heart. I'm not dangerous, the darkness is. But what does that even mean? Jenna said, her voice trembling. If you're really you, then how did you come back? I don't know, the girl stammered, fear twisting her features. But I'm not alone. I can feel them coming, something dark that shut up. Lila spat, backing away. This is too much. Then it happened. With a deafening roar, the ground beneath them cracked like glass, a fierce tremor shaking their feet. A rift opened at the center of the cul-de-sac, pulling the shadows into a swirling vortex. Their shrieks drowned in the chaos. An otherworldly cry pierced through the night. Run! Lila screamed, grabbing onto Jenna's wrist, dragging her back in the opposite direction. Max and Sam followed, but the girl stood frozen, mouth agape. Help me! You have to help! Before Lila could look back, a hand shot out from the rift, skeletal fingers grasping the air, reaching for the girl. Panic ignited a fire behind Lila's eyes as she ran, crushing the urge to save the impossible. They sprinted down the street, desperation propelling them faster as the rift howled, and the air grew thick with grief. What was that? Sam breathed, glancing back. The shadows twisted and writhed, taking on shapes of unspeakable horror. Did we just leave her? What if that was really her? Jenna broke into a sob. We couldn't have helped her. We'd be trapped too. Yeah, but we didn't even try. Max shouted. What kind of friends do that? The clash of guilt and dread turned the air sharp, like jagged glass, slicing the fabric of their unity. The wind picked up, carrying faint whispers that snaked around them, words too faint to catch but sinister enough to deliver chills down their spines. As they rounded another corner, Lila felt her breath catch. The street, once familiar, now morphed into a labyrinth of endless shadows. A scream clawed at her throat as she stumbled, suddenly unsure of which way led back home. Where are we? Lila's voice edged into hysteria. Max grabbed her arm, eyes wild. Somehow, we took a wrong turn. We can't be far from everything. Just as they prepared to forge ahead, a figure emerged from the dark ahead, blocking their path. They froze, dread settling in their chests like lead. With a sickening twist, the shadow took shape, unveiling itself in the dim light. Once again, it was her uncle, but he looked distorted. You shouldn't have run, Lila, he rasped, veins pulsating beneath his skin in ghostly luminescence. Get back! Jenna screamed, pointlessly, her voice mingling with their rising terror. Lila felt the warmth draining from her body as uncertainty gripped her. But before they could bolt, the shadows behind twisted into grotesque figures, ready to consume them whole. Whatever you do, don't look away, her uncle's voice slipped into a low growl. The air thickened with an unseen weight. A new horror gripped their hearts tighter. What have we really summoned? And in that excruciating moment of uncertainty, Lila realized something had come for them, and it wouldn't stop until it had claimed its due. Panic flared in Lila's chest as her uncle's form loomed, disfigured and nightmarish, casting an unnatural glow in the darkness. The very air around them seemed to quiver, echoing her uncle's deathly whisper. As the shadows crawled closer, they became less like mere specters and more like ravenous beasts, slithering toward their prey. Run! Max shouted again, snapping Lila from her paralysis. Eluding the horrifying vision of her uncle, she yanked Jenna and raced down the street. Fear ignited adrenaline within her, yet it felt futile. The labyrinth had changed. Streets twisted unnaturally, each turn leading them deeper into unknown territory, drowning them in shadows. They sprinted with no destination, headlights of distant cars mere pinpricks of hope that flickered in and out of existence. Lila glanced behind her, and what she saw etched itself into her memory forever. Skeletal figures writhing, mouths opened wide in silent screams, their presence darkening the night. Where do we go? Sam gasped between breaths, his face pale. This can't be real. Jenna shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. We can't last much longer, they're everywhere. In that moment of despair, Lila stumbled to a stop. Her heart pounded like a drum, drowning out reason. Maybe if we face it, we can stop this. The others shot her incredulous looks. Are you crazy? Max protested. You want to go back? It's a trap. It's not just shadows. Lila insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. They're drawing power from our fear. We can't let them win. As if on cue, a chorus of disembodied voices filled the air, whispering their doubts and insecurities, swirling around them like a tornado of despair. You're not enough, you will fail, give in. No! Lila shouted, clamping her hands over her ears. We have to fight it. Fight what? Sam yelled back, fear boiling over. What are we supposed to fight on this cursed street? But Lila's resolve steeled. We stand together. The words felt like a lifeline, even as she said them. If we stop running, we take the darkness away from its source. With a nod, swept by a wave of determination, they turned to face her uncle. The looming figure held a clarity amidst the shadows, pulsing with a grotesque heartbeat. She stepped forward, heart pounding, forcing her voice to be steady. Uncle, you are not him. You're not the person we knew. This is a nightmare, and we'll wake from it. The shadows flickered, and for the briefest moment, she glimpsed a look of recognition in her uncle's eyes, a shift that hinted at humanity trapped within the horror. But it was fleeting. A bone-chilling laugh erupted from somewhere deep within him, twisting the shadowy mass into a more terrifying state. You think you can just claim the light? I am what you created. His twisted smile stretched impossibly wide, as the shadows swelled around him, filling the air with cold dread. Focus! Lila shouted, trying to lock eyes with her friends, pulling them into the moment. Think of something that brings you hope. Something worth fighting for. Jenna's breath hitched. My sister! I have to get home to her. Max clenched his fists, body tensing. I want to see my mom again. Sam lowered his head, the shadows beginning to close in. I want to go back to school, feel normal again. As their voices rose, the darkness quivered. They fought their desires against the encroaching terror. Lila's mind screamed for an ally, something tangible to grab onto. But all around them, the shadows tightened, feeding off their fear, swirling in a storm. You will join me in this void. Surrender, and I will grant you peace, the distorted voice crooned. No! Lila shouted, feeling a surge of anger. You don't own us! The shadows paused, as if her defiance struck them like a blow. For a moment, it seemed to give way, allowing a crack of light to pierce through the inky blackness. Lila stepped forward, heart racing, feeling a spark of hope ignite. But as quickly as it appeared, the darkness recoiled, revealing more figures emerging from the void. Twisted versions of their lost friends seeking revenge. Run! A scream sliced through the air, but this time Lila stood firm, staring into the abyss of despair. And in her resolve, a truth dawned. The true horror was not just out there, but they had awakened something even deeper within themselves. Would they succumb to the darkness, or would they unlock their shared strength against the shadows creeping ever closer? Something deep within Lila felt the answer lay somewhere ahead, but would they have the courage to confront what lay lurking? The shadows quivered, pulsating with a life of their own, as Lila gripped her friend's hands tighter. Stay with me, she urged, feeling the weight of their despair. The twisted figures jerked forward, their mournful whispers taunting, join us, join us. Suddenly, a vile screech pierced the air, a dissonant symphony of lost souls mingling with the rustling of the darkness. It halted them in their tracks, causing Jenna to squeeze Lila's hand so hard it hurt. Max's face strained of color as he pointed behind them. They're coming! The twisted apparitions of their friends crawled closer, eyes dead and yet somehow gleaming with malevolence, mouths pulling back into sickening grins. Come play with us, they beckoned, their voices a hissing fusion of all the laughter that once filled the hallways of their school, now woven with a thread of malice. I won't play, Lila yelled, more for herself than for the others. We're done being afraid. She took a step forward, the light of their shared hope flickering faintly against the encroaching darkness. Max hesitated, looking at the grin of his former best friend. What if they're not just shadows? He whispered, dread creeping into his eyes. What if they want us to join them? Then we fight, Lila declared, drawing on the thin sliver of light that still sparked between them. Think of your memories. Remember who you are. Each friend closed their eyes momentarily, grappling with the terrifying lure of the shadows while clinging to fading fragments of joy. Lila's mind raced. Memories of baking cookies in the kitchen, giggling with Jenna as they sneaked off to watch horror movies at midnight, the warm embrace of reassurance after a rough day. Love! Lila shouted suddenly. Remember love! Behind her, shadows wavered, recoiling as if burned by the very word itself. Jenna opened her eyes, a flicker of clarity returning. My sister loves me! She shouted, her voice rising. That's why I'm fighting. Mom! Max cried out, tears tracking down his cheeks. I'm fighting for her. She loved me even when I was nothing. In unison, Sam shouted, I want to live, I don't want to lose, but darkness surged forward, its cold breath wrapping around them like a vice. The shadows twisted, forming fangs and claws reaching greedily into the light. You cannot escape! They shrieked in unison. No more! Lila braced herself as the figures lurched towards them, a cacophony of rage and hunger. Hope is stronger than your fear. With a surge of will, she stepped up, channeling all her light and determination. One by one, the whispers began to silence, shrouded in the glow of their shared memories. The light expanded, pushing the shadows back like a tide, until the air thrummed with energy. But as the shadows shrank, another voice emerged, a guttural growl cloaked in familiarity. You think you can just cast me aside? You've fed me for years. Lila's breath caught in her throat. It was the voice of her uncle. The figure reappeared, now a flickering ghost, torn between the light and darkness, a grotesque echo frozen in despair. You can never escape, I am a part of you all! Drumming fear reverberated in her chest, but Lila stood firm. Courage welled inside her, fierce and unyielding. We're not just a part of you. We are our own. The shadows twirled hungrily, threatening to envelop them once more. Desperation stung Lila's eyes as she glanced at her friends, who all met her gaze. Rising emotion mingled with terror, their hearts beating as one. Together! They shouted in unison, drawing on their unity. The brightness surged forth, a bright barrier against the looming darkness, but even so, doubt crept in. Will it be enough? Max gasped, uncertainty flickering in the corners of his mind. In that moment of confrontation, Lila's heart ached. They could not afford to doubt, not now. As the darkness writhed and screamed in rage, Lila took an unwavering step forward, ready to breach the looming darkness once and for all. But as the light erupted, an eerie silence enveloped the space, forcing the group to freeze in terror. The truth stepped closer, something darker still awaited them at the end of this journey. What awaited beyond the veil of shadows? A greater horror hungry for their very despair. Would they be able to face what lay in wait, or would fear rewrite their fate? The light flared, brilliant and blue, momentarily pushing back the shadows. Hope twisted against despair, battling furiously like two sides of a tug-of-war rope. Lila felt a warm shiver spread across her limbs as her heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the pulsing glow. Then, as quickly as it had ignited, the brightness flickered. Darkness surged again, creeping from the corners like static, swallowing their hope whole. Panic intertwined with the odor of damp earth, the scent of fear. We're losing it! Jenna cried, her voice thin and frantic. Sweat glistened on her forehead, and the shadows clawed at her, whispering horrific secrets of what lay beyond the veil. The silhouettes shimmered, their faces twisting into grotesque masks of familiar figures, each one retreating and yet pressing closer in endless loops of despair. Focus on the love! Lila shouted, her throat raw. Think of the light. Think of the laughter. But Max was shaking his head, his gaze trailing to a shadow that took the shape of something far more sinister. Lila, it's not just memories, he pleaded, dread bleeding into his tone. They're real. They're us but worse. They want to feast on our pain. No! You're wrong! She snapped, gripping their hands tighter, feeling the pulse of fear try to worm its way into her veins. Around them, The air turned frigid, sharpening the edges of their panic. The shadows only grew bolder, stretching their spindly limbs toward the group, drawn by their despair and urging in sorrowful echoes for their surrender. One by one, shadows morphed into despairingly familiar faces, lost loved ones, former friends, even long-forgotten enemies, each voice a chilling reminder of how fragile the mind could be. "Join us, Lila." It was her uncle again, his voice like a dagger. "You're one of us. You've always been." Her stomach churned. "No! I want tea!" she yelled, and her scream shattered the air. "What if we are them?" Sam whispered, almost to himself. His shoulders slumped as the shadows crept closer. "What if this is who we truly are?" Lila dared not look at her friends. What if they were right? The darkness wrapped tighter. She could feel the edges of her sanity fraying, whispering doubts that clawed at her brain. "Remember!" She turned to her friends, desperation bubbling to the surface. "Remember who we are!" With shaking hands, Lila dug deep and summoned every ounce of love, every moment of real joy that brightened their shared past. Their laughter echoed against the deepening twilight, a symphony of rebellion. It broke through the despair shrouding them, warming the edges of their hearts. And then the shadows recoiled once more. They seemed to ripple, pulsating with rage. "You think love can protect you?" hissed the twisted echoes. "You are nothing without us. We will swallow you whole." "I'd rather die fighting," shouted Max, a fresh fire igniting in his eyes. "Then let us go," Jenna added, taking a deep breath as if the light was a lifeline. "All of us together." The darkness surged again, screeching in an eerie symphony of torment. It swirled menacingly, a vortex of anguished faces reaching out, taunting them with their unfulfilled desires and fears. As Lila stood her ground, the shadows lurking on the periphery finally lunged forward, a lovely dance of death. But before they collided, the air burst like a dam, shattering their memories, ignited in a dazzling whirlwind of color and sound. It was a cacophony of childhood laughter, the smell of freshly baked cookies wafting, sunny days spent by the lake. But just when it seemed the glow would consume all, a deep rumble echoed behind them. The darkness pulsated in horrifying anticipation. "Fools!" a monstrous voice crooned, deeper, richer, as if it fed off the very essence of their light. Suddenly, the ground began to tremble, and all hope slipped into chaos. What was lurking in the embrace of the darkness? What larger nightmare awaited just beyond their grasp? Lila felt her heart race as reality began to warp. Would they ever be free, or was this merely the prelude to a far worse fate? The ground shook violently, sending vibrations racing through Lila's bones. Panic rippled through the group as the ground split open like a gaping maw. Dark mist seeped from the widening crevasse, curling around their ankles, pulling at their feet with cold, greedy fingers. "Back away!" Lila yelled, although her voice was barely audible over the shriek of the shadows that surged around them. They writhed like a storm, drawn to the rift as if it held the promise of something far greater than despair. "What is that?" Jenna trembled, eyes wide with horror. "I don't know," Lila shouted, anxiety flooding her veins. Her heart hammered furiously, the rhythm echoing the booming voice that had commanded the night. "But we can't let it pull us down." Max turned, his face pale, eyes darting. "We need to fight. We can't just stand here." It felt as if time warped, every second stretching on forever. The darkness pulled around them, oily tendrils lapping at their hearts, reminding them of past traumas, each muted scream a specter of that which they feared most. "Together!" Lila cried, forcing herself to focus on her friends. She squeezed their hands tighter, willing her love for them to shimmer bright against the dark tide. "Remember the light. Remember who we are." But doubt gnawed at her thoughts, a persistent whisper. What if this was all they were? What if they were merely reflections of the darkness, lost souls with nothing but pain to hold on to? The swirling shadows shifted, seeming to read her mind, morphing into their greatest fears. The faces of torment, betrayal, and loss spun around them, fogging their resolve. Lila saw her uncle's face again, twisted, hungry, pulling her closer to that yawning abyss. It doesn't want us to be friends, Sam cried out, shaking with fear. It wants to tear us apart. Then we fight it together. Max's voice was stronger now, resonating with unexpected courage. The darkness throbbed as if reacting to Max's call, and the air changed. Something heavier pressed down upon them. A sense of dread thick as fog wrapped around their throats, yet Lila pushed ahead, forcing her mind to block out the haunting images. Suddenly, in the chaos, the ground began to split wider. The gaping void churned, and from it rose a form cloaked in shadows, a massive figure spitting a corrosive mist. Its eyes glinted with a terrifying understanding, as if it could perceive every one of their memories, every one of their dreams. With a bone-chilling cackle, the voice echoed again, sharper this time. You think love can protect you? This is who you are, fractured and broken. You are nothing without the darkness. Lila stumbled back, but Jenna's grip was unwavering. We can't let it define us, she pleaded, her voice breaking. It's wrong. Love is stronger. In a moment of clarity, Lila took a breath and shouted, then let us show it what we're made of. One last time. The group held hands, squeezing tighter as the shadows surged forward. Lila felt their collective energy swell, pulsing against the darkness with every heartfelt memory, every shared laugh, every moment they fought back the night. Yet, even as the warmth grew, the shadows screamed, amplifying their tension, boiling over into an almost tangible frenzy. They beckoned from the edge of the void, twisting and contorting, tempting the group with promises of release from their struggles. Then, from the depths, a serpent of darkness whipped up, appearing to strike. It lashed out at their unity, eager to ensnare them in its grip. Hold on! Max shouted desperately. They formed a shield, but Lila knew it wouldn't last long. The darkness rallied, crawling towards them, eager to pull them into the desolation. Just as it seemed the abyss would swallow them whole, Lila felt a feeble flicker of hope spark within, and she voiced it, rallying both her friends and herself. But before she could step forward, a deafening crash boomed, and the very fabric of their reality began to shatter. What lay beyond that veil of darkness? Were they about to cross into despair, or could they break free? With breath caught in her throat, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The cacophony of the shattering reality swallowed Lila whole, her vision splintering into fragments. She felt the warmth of her friends' hands, their grip a feeble lifeline in the encroaching darkness. Panic surged within her as the shadows lurched closer, twisting into grotesque shapes effigies of her worst fears. Lila, can you hear me? Max's voice seeped through the chaos, each word weighted with urgency. But the shadows swelled, drowning out his words, morphing into wails of agony. We are what we fear! They shrieked. Become one with the darkness. Lila squeezed her eyes shut. She fought to remember. Remember the laughter at summer camp, the campfire stories, their shared hopes. Feel the light! She screamed, feeling the flicker of warmth in her heart growing dim under the pressure of despair. Jenna's voice cut through the suffocating weight. Lila! The memories! Hold on to them! With clenched fists, Lila concentrated. She envisioned a bright summer day, carefree and radiant. She pictured their silly jokes, the sound of their laughter echoing like a melody. Light flooded her mind, pushing back against the shadows. I won't let you take us! She shouted, the fire in her voice ringing like a bell of defiance. But the veil of shadows hissed, feeling the fissure in their assault. You are nothing, Lila! Just another illusion. We will consume you. The serpent of darkness coiled tighter, its cold grasp choking the breath from her lungs. One by one, her friends faltered. We're not strong enough. Sam gasped, the fear etched on his face. Don't give in! Lila cried out, desperation pooling in her chest. She felt the panic of the group swell as the shadows roared, their twisted forms closing in. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled again, a violent shake that rattled their bones. What now? Jenna cried, terror flickering in her eyes. The void throbbed as if alive, ready to swallow them whole. A deep rumble resonated from the crevasse, and for a bleeding moment, Lila thought she could feel a heartbeat. Was it the abyss, or was it something inside her, thrumming wildly against her ribs? Maybe it's all connected, she gasped, the thought pushing through the haze of fear. Connected? Max echoed, dread creeping into his voice. Maybe if we call it by name, Lila said, struggling to organize her racing thoughts. What if we confront it, face it together? We can't let it claim us. We named the shadows. The shadows recoiled at her words, hesitating as if confused. With each heartbeat, Lila wrestled the strength back from the grip of despair. Shame. Rage. Regret. You have no power over us. As she shouted the names, visions of their darkest moments surged in her mind. Each emotion rendered tangible. The group gasped as they felt the weight of their own battles against those haunting specters. The shadowy figures writhed like snakes, shrieking in pain. But the moment of empowerment was fleeting. The shadows retaliated, a flurry of darkness that surged anew, crashing against their unity and threatening to tear them apart. The ground began to crack further, fragments of earth cascading into the abyss, swallowing what remained. No! We won't let you! Lila bellowed, but her conviction was faltering, dampened by the tide of despair. Then, through the chaos, a crackling sound pulled at her ears, crashing like thunder. The fabric of their world shimmered, illusions separating, different pieces of their fears fracturing into spectral forms. What is happening? Jenna screamed, pleaded, confusion etched on her features. Stay together, Max shouted, his voice losing ground to the encroaching shadows. Suddenly, silhouettes emerged from the void, figures that mirrored Lila's friends but twisted, distorted into monstrous visages that mocked their worst moments. As their screams rang, Lila's heart fumbled within her chest. The shadows laughed, a chilling chorus that echoed in the hollow space. In a panic, Lila shouted one more name: Hope. The word hung in the air, bright against the smothering darkness. It pierced through the din, a beacon that momentarily cut through the despair. But the shadows screeched back, fangs bared, ready to strike. Can hope withstand the darkness? Lila wondered, feeling the ground slip beneath them. And in that moment she realized this was only the beginning of their reckoning. A sudden blast of searing pain shot through Lila's chest, as if the darkness itself had pierced her heart. She stumbled back, her vision blurring, the shadows around her morphing into a nightmarish kaleidoscope. Hope! Max's voice broke through, but it was drenched in panic. It's fading! Lila, focus! The echoes of shrieks tangled with laughter. The figures before her danced, grotesque caricatures of her friends wrapped in shadows, each face twisted with anguish and unholy reflection of their fears. Her mind screamed in protest, fighting to shield her from the sight, but the shadows were relentless. Do you see? The shadows taunted, their collective voices a chilling symphony. This is who you are. Who they'll become. Each word struck Lila like a dagger, twisting deep into her core. No, she gasped, almost choking on the weight of their words. She could feel the fractures within her friends, their own despair leaking like poison. Sam was shaking, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. Fight it! We can't let them win! How? He croaked. There are fears. No! Lila shouted, summoning every ounce of strength. We are more. We are stronger together. She forced out memories of laughter, of sunny days, the way their voices lifted in harmony. Each fleeting moment sparked light in the sepulchre of shadows. The general din began to ebb, shadows struggling under the weight of their memories. But for every ounce of light they regained, the darkness fought back harder, roaring with a ferocity that sent tremors through the ground. Stay united! Jenna screamed, her eyes locked on Lila. Behind her, Max's figure was swallowed whole by a wave of despair, leaving a shrieking silhouette in his place. Max! Lila lunged forward as another fracture split open. She could feel him slipping away. She reached for him, grasping the ethereal remnants of his spirit, pulling him close. Don't let go. Your strength is here. He wavered, the state between fear and hope written across his face. Lila, I can't. Yes, you can. She could feel the thrum of hope pulsing between them, stronger than the darkness surrounding them. Remember us. Remember this. As she spoke, the shrieks grew louder, mingling with a low, guttural growl echoing from the depths. It was as if reality itself was shattering, splitting them apart, threatening to cast each into swirling oblivion. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of frenzied voices trying to drown out Lila's defiance. But hope had ignited something. A flicker, then a flame that sparked in Max's eyes. He reached out, and the connection flared like a spark. They could feel the warmth that had once united them. Then, as if stirred by the weight of their combined memories, the abyss trembled violently, and for a moment, the ground glimmered with the light of their shared defiance. Lila laughed, her voice tearing through the shadows. We are not just what we fear. We're alive. We're friends. But as they rallied together, shadows lunged forward, baring their jagged teeth, reveling in the chaos. You think you can resist? You are dust. We will consume you. A violent surge shook the ground. Lila felt her body lift off the ground, suspended in a vertiginous spin, her vision a blur of terror. For a heartbeat, she glimpsed the crevice, the yawning void beneath, expanding, threatening to swallow entire worlds. Then, something shifted. An old memory resurfaced in the whirlwind, a face she'd almost forgotten, someone who had been lost in her past. No! This couldn't be. You're here too? But time twisted, and the fleeting recognition faded as a new darkness enveloped them, a shroud thicker than before. The figures became one writhing mass of torment, laughing as they closed in. Face us, Lila, the voice dripped with malice, echoing through the churning shadows. Nothing awaits you but despair. In that moment, Lila grasped the darkness with raw determination, wanting to pull it apart. No! You're not everything I am. As the shadows dove toward her, she screamed, You will not take us. The void howled, a final roar meeting Lila's defiance just as the shadows converged, intertwining. The ground split wide open beneath their feet, an abyss gaping hungrily, ready to claim them all. And in that last moment, as darkness tumbled towards them, an unexpected truth stirred deep within, one they had yet to uncover. What if the true horror lurked behind the very thing they thought they knew? The heart of the shadows pulsed, and Lila's breath quickened as uncertainty crawled beneath her skin. Together or apart? She whispered into the dark, a question that held their fate, and the next battle loomed ominously ahead, waiting to ignite. Lila's heartbeat pounded in her ears as the shadows melded into a writhing vortex around them. Everything was falling apart, the ground beneath cracking like glass, chaos spewing from the abyss. But amidst the terror, a flicker ignited inside her, a bright spark of unwavering hope. Together, we will fight! Lila shouted, rallying her friends before the darkness swallowed them whole. Max, Jenna, and Sam looked at her with fear-written faces, but a glimmer of determination began to spark in their eyes. Hold on to each other, Lila urged, willing them to remember the love that had stitched them together all these years. Shadows whipped around them, mocking laughter boring into their minds, but she pushed it aside. They were stronger than this. Think of every moment that brought you joy, Lila yelled, pressing forward against the dark tide. The time we laughed until we cried, the adventures we shared, the love we have, it's all we need. And at that moment, they all called out, each one shouting their memories into the void: the lake trip, cozy movie nights, the first summer camp. Their voices melded into a powerful harmony of hope. Lila felt the warmth bloom, pushing back the shadows inching closer. The darkness howled in protest, but they surged forward undeterred, holding tightly to each other as they locked in their shared light. Just a little more, Lila urged, her grasp tightening. Together. The swirling darkness began to fracture, the ominous laughing fading as fears retreated, weakened by the force of their words. She could feel the space around them shifting, the shadows flickering like flames against the storm. You're nothing, Lila shouted defiantly, standing tall against the churning mass of horror. Then the shadows coalesced, charging forth with rage. You cannot escape. You are trapped in this void with us. No! Lila's voice rang like a bell, sharp and clear against the noise. You don't define us. We are not alone. We reject you. At that proclamation, a brilliant light erupted from the four of them, a blinding shock that cut through the smothering darkness. The shadows shrieked as the brightness pushed against them, glowing more intensely as it drew strength from their unity. Lila's heart soared. We did it! She cried, feeling that shared bond strengthened love connecting them, empowering them. But just as victory seemed within reach, the shadows lurched violently, morphing into grotesque manifestations of failure. They crawled closer, whispering venomous taunts that threatened to crack the newfound courage in Lila's heart. This is who you really are. Join us. They hissed. She gasped as the figures transformed into swirling images of her own insecurities, moments of doubt, pain, and anguish, all the things she had buried deep inside. No, you're wrong! She shouted, shaking her head fiercely. Lila, we can't! Max cried out, the flicker in his eyes dimming against the weight of despair. Yes, we can! This is not who we are! Lila screamed, pressing her hands to her chest as the darkness twisted through the air like a serpent. We've faced worse together. This shadow is just a reflection of what we fear. It doesn't define us. The ground vibrated as darkness writhed around them, but Lila stood her ground. She wasn't alone. They weren't alone. With a powerful roar, Lila focused all her energy into that radiant light within, feeling its warmth spread to each of her friends. The shadows screamed, retreating momentarily, but she pressed on, heart racing. Remember the love! Remember the light! And with that, a brilliant wave surged within them, crashing violently against the dark tide. Shadows shrieked, splaying outwards as the light enveloped them all, a protective shield against the consuming void. Keep going! Lila shouted, pushing forward. Hold on tight! Max echoed, squeezing his friend's hands tightly. As the shadows tightened their grip, Lila let loose every ounce of love, every victorious moment shared between them, refusing to let despair win. She stood tall, seconds stretching into eternal breaths, heart racing against the spiraling void. From the ground erupted a glow that pushed against the yawning abyss, a bright force that forced shadows recoiling as Lila gathered the strength from within, feeling their connections solidify. And in an explosion of brilliance, the shadows peeled away, retreating into the abyss, the night suddenly bathed in calm. Silence enveloped them as the echo of despair faded, leaving behind only the warmth of their shared victory. Lila felt the heavy weight lift off her chest, and she glanced at her friends, who stood beside her, faces lit with smiles of relief and triumph. We made it, Jenna breathed, her arms enveloping Lila in a warm hug. Together, Max added, laughter bubbling up as joy flooded the moment. But the shadows still lingered, swirling at the edges, not fully conquered. Lila knew this was only the beginning, the true fight lay ahead. In that tranquil moment, she felt the pulse of the night beneath their feet, a reminder that darkness always lingered, waiting for its chance. We have to stay together, Lila urged, looking each of her friends in the eye. This isn't over yet. We need to watch each other's backs. We're with you, Sam affirmed, glancing backwards as shadows twinkled in the backdrop. Together they stepped forward into the uncertainty of night, hand in hand, hearts beating as one. They would face whatever darkness awaited. They would face it all, but that wasn't just a farewell. It was the promise of what was to come. They weren't just survivors. They were warriors. And for Lila and her friends, that was enough. Now, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next mind-blowing stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling finale. Show them what it means to join this amazing journey.